In the summer of 1975, there was a new event that was supposed to happen in England. The first limited over World Cup of cricket matches was happening in the month of June in England, and there were 8 teams that were taking part. Now, with my newfound love for the game, I was very excited and I was really looking forward to following the matches. It was still 1975. The only means that was available to us to follow the game was still that bulky radio set. But there was a difference, the matches that I had followed till now were happening in India, and I was listening to the Indian commentators. The commentary was being broadcast on Indian radio stations, and suddenly India had not sent their own team of commentators there. And I was trying to figure out, how is it that I'm going to listen to this commentary? And then, the help came from the most, unusual circumstances. My dad was an avid listener to the Urdu news, which was broadcast by the BBC. And from him, I got an idea of the frequencies around which the broadcast from BBC would be heard. So I managed to play around the frequencies that he would use, and lo and behold, I figured out that yes, there was a station that used to broadcast what was called the test match specials. Although this was not test matches being broadcast, this was one-day cricket, but the whole program that BBC used to broadcast was to be called test match special, and that was my first exposure to international commentators, people like Brian Johnston, who would later on go on to become one of my favorite commentators. I think his brand of commentary, where he would involve lots of humor when he was talking about cricket, was really very endearing. People like Christopher Martin Jenkins and Henry Blofeld, and then they would rope in commentators from overseas also. So there was Tony Cozier from West Indies, Jim Maxwell from Australia, and then they would get some ex-cricketers as experts in their panels, people like Fred Truman and Trevor Bailey, who were a part of the panel there. So this was a completely new world opening up to me, very fascinating. Now, the format of the World Cup was such that all 4 matches involving the 8 teams would happen on the same day. And the anchor at the BBC station would give you 15-minute slots for each game, and while you were listening to the commentary of one game, you wouldn't really know what was happening in the other games. So India was pitted against the host nation England, and incidentally, the first ball that was bowled in the World Cup was bowled by an Indian bowler called Madan Lal. So he has the distinction of being the guy who first bowled the first ball in the first World Cup that ever happened. England was batting first, India was bowling, and England gave us a royal hammering in that match. Their opener Dennis Amiss scored 134 runs, and England went on to score 334 runs in the first innings, and they allocated 60 overs. These matches were 60 overs aside. And when India's turn came into bat, it couldn't really have been a worse start than that, because all India could muster in those 60 overs was 132 runs. And Indian opener, Mr. Sunil Gavaskar, had this dubious distinction of batting through the 60 overs, and he scored 36 runs, not out, with just 1 boundary on the 60 overs. That is how unprepared the Indian team was about limited over cricket, and they went on to lose their second match to New Zealand. They won, the only win in that tournament was against East Africa, which was not even a proper cricket playing nation. And of course, India couldn't make it into the semi-finals. By the way, in the group stages, there was another interesting match that had happened in the other group involving Pakistan and the West Indies. I was familiar with the West Indies players, but I had read so much about the Pakistan superstars. At that time, fast bowlers like Imran Khan and Sarfaraz Nawaz. You had batsmen like Zahir Abbas and Asif Iqbal, Mushtaq Mohammad, Majid Khan, the flamboyant opener, Wasim Raja, so team full of superstars. And in their match against the West Indies, aided by a 50 by Mushtaq Mohammad, Pakistan scored 266 runs in their first batting. And when West Indies started to bat, half their side was back in the pavilion in less than 100 runs. They were 99 for 5. And they went on to be 166 for 8. And at that stage, the only recognized batsman that they had left was their wicketkeeper, Derek Murray. And he, along with the two tail-enders, Holder and Andy Roberts later, he managed to take the West Indies to a famous victory. West Indies ultimately won with the last pair on the crease, Murray and Roberts. In fact, in the last over, Wasim Raja missed an opportunity to run out one of the batsmen. But net, West Indies managed to win that match, and had Pakistan won that match, who knows what would have happened in terms of teams going into the semi-finals. But it was ultimately West Indies and Australia from the other group that went into semi-finals, and from India's group it was England and New Zealand who went into the semi-finals. So that's how dramatic the first finals of the World Cup was, and it's still, those incidents from the final are a part of the folklore, cricketing folklore.